Okay, so today is March 26, 2026, and what we have here on the left is the ranking of European clubs as displayed by Opta on their website, and what we have on the right is the ranking of same clubs at the same date, but in my own model. We will get to what these rankings are in more detail later in this video, but to understand how we got here, I think we need to get back in time a little, and more specifically on this date. So this was April 25th, 2025, so late last season. Liverpool was playing Tottenham at home. They won 5-1, as you can see here. And this is the game where they mathematically became English champions, or they won the Premier League. And a few weeks later, on May 25th, they were given the trophy, and that's the day they were actual champions of England. Now, fast forward, just a week later, we are now in Munich. This is the day of the Champions League final. We had PSG facing Inter Milan. They won 5-0, and they won the UCL this year. And more importantly, in the context of this video, they also won the French Cup, Coupe de France, and the French League as well. Which takes us to June 1st, 2025. So this was the day right after the final. I was just at home chilling, reading some reports and news around this final. And something I was interested about was Opta. So that's something I keep an eye on, not daily, but I keep an eye on. And I was just curious around what their rankings were saying around this season overall. So the UCL final was the last game of the season for me. And this is what I could find around what their ratings were on June 1st, so the day after the UCL final. So 10th was Aston Villa, 9th was Chelsea, 8th was Madrid, 7th was Inter Milan, who just lost the final, 6th was Bayern, 5th was Barcelona, 4th was Manchester City, 3rd was PSG, 2nd was Arsenal, and 1st was Liverpool. So we can stop just for a second on this ranking. And when I was looking at this ranking on this date, something didn't feel right, or something just felt a bit off. And the first thing I had in mind was that PSG actually kicked out Liverpool in the round of 16 and kicked out Arsenal in the semi-final on their UCL run this season. The second thing is looking at a summary of the 24-25 season. So we're just going to take the 5 clubs that ended at the top of the ranking for Opta this season and just see their achievements or what they did. So if we start with Liverpool, they won the league. They went out of the FA Cup in the 4th round, and they were out of the Champions League in the round of 16, eliminated by PSG. Then Arsenal finished 2nd in the league. They went out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round, and they went out of the Champions League, eliminated by PSG. Then PSG won the French League, won the French Cup, and won the Champions League. Then Manchester City finished 3rd in the league, was finalist in the FA Cup, and was out of the Champions League in the playoff round. And finally, Barcelona won the Spanish League. They also won the Spanish Cup, and they were out of the semi-final of the Champions League this season. So the basic question I had in mind was like, how can this final table or these final results end up with these ratings? That's something that was really quite not right with me when I was looking just strictly at like what different teams achieved and how they were ranked by Opta. So starting from here, I just did what any normal person would do and just started working on my own model. And I'm calling this project euroelo, and this is something I've been working on for a couple of months now, and I just want to share with you what I've learned through working on this project and how and what I understand basically from statistical modeling around football. So the first thing I want to share is that Opta shares their methodology on their website. You can go on their website and find it, it's pretty easy. But the important thing is that my idea was not to copy or replicate their model. I wanted to build a model based on my own assumptions, based on my own opinion and understanding of football. So fast forward a couple of months later, my model is in somewhat good state, but because it was my own model and my own data, something I was able to do was to go back in time and compare or see what my model was saying for June 1st, 2025. So here on the left, we have Opta's ranking on June 1st, again that's what I shared earlier. And then with my model I could go back in time and see what my model was saying for the same date. And we will see some interesting differences. So let's start at the bottom. So my model at 10th had Galatasaray, at 9th had Atletico Madrid, at 8th City, at 7th Arsenal, Liverpool was 6th, Inter Milan was 5th, Bayern Munich was 4th, Real Madrid was 3rd, Barcelona was 2nd, and PSG was 1st. Again, the idea was not to copy or replicate Opta, so this is completely normal that the two models don't show the same ranking at a given date. But just like if we stop on this comparison for a second, we can see some interesting differences. And if it's not clear enough for now, I just added here the differences between the two rankings. So if we start again at the bottom, I found out that Galatasaray was actually 50th in Opta's, but 10th in my model. Actually, this year they won both the league and the cup. Atletico Madrid was 11th on Opta's, 9th in mine. Then we have three English clubs, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, who were both lower in my model compared to Opta's. Then Inter Milan was rated slightly higher, and same for Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and PSG. So yeah, when we look at both his model, I think it is interesting to try to understand why two models can give such different rankings. And I think it all comes down to what I'm calling modeling assumptions. We're not going to get really in detail, really technical. I want to keep it high level. But I will try to explain what are the differences between Opta's model and my own model. So at a high level, both models work on the same method. They both work on the ELO rating system. This is the system that is used in many things, but more famously in chess. That's how they rank players. And both systems use the same base ELO ratings method. But this is what comes after that's more interesting. So the first main difference between the two models is how many leagues we account for. Opta specifies on their website that they basically calculate for all the football games in the world. So they say they have over 2 million games as of today. And in my case, I only account for games happening in Europe. So most of European leagues, European cups. And as of now, I have around 200,000 matches in my database. The second main difference is that Opta has a cross-calibration in their model. It means that they actually factor in the country the club plays for, and it helps them basically balance or calibrate how the ratings should behave depending on the country the club is in. And this is something I don't have in my model. Again, one of the main reasons is that I'm not looking into all the leagues in the world, so maybe I have less of a need to have a cross-calibration. But also because I think that it's not necessary to have this kind of calibration, and I will get to that later. Something else that's different is that Opta accounts for margin of victory. So again, to keep it simple, it will award more points if you win by a larger goal difference. So a win by plus 5 goals means more than the win by just like 1 goal difference. And this is something, again, I don't have in my model. But for this one, it's simply because I haven't found a proper way to actually account for it. I could easily just add, subtract goals. But for me, as of now, it's more noise than anything, so I'm choosing not to include margin of victory in the model. And the last one is competitive context. And on this point, it's unclear if Opta includes it. I suspect they do, but they don't really write it clearly on their methodology. And in my model, it's something that's really central and critical, and that's what I will be explaining Okay, so in order to explain competitive context, I will pick two teams and I will explain why. So I'm picking Liverpool and PSG because Liverpool is the team that gets the first spot in their ranking, and PSG is the team that gets the first spot in my ranking. But also PSG season in 24-25 is, as an object to study, is like an interesting statistical outlier. Like winning a treble is pretty rare, and I just find it interesting to see like how a model interprets this kind of event. Okay, so we have the two teams here, and what I will do is basically select the same, roughly the same subset of games to have like a clean basis for comparison. So first I will just bring in what they did in their own domestic leagues. So here we have the record for Liverpool in the Premier League and the record for PSG in the French League. So we can see Premier League has 38 games, League 1 has only 34, but that's a base record of games I'm looking at. Then I can also add what they did in their own domestic cups. Liverpool went out after 2 games, and PSG actually won the cup this year. And I can also add their run in the Champions League. Here it gets interesting as we can see that Liverpool won 7 of the 8 games in the group stage, didn't play in the playoffs, and in the round of 16 then they won against PSG in the first leg but lost, and we can see here that it matches. So PSG didn't have as good of a run in the group stage, had to go to playoffs, and then in the round of 16 they lost against Liverpool but won the second leg, and then went to qualify in penalty shootout and went to actually win the trophy at the end of the season. So yeah, this is the base data I'm looking at, or the base subset of games I'm looking at. And from here we can already have to have some level of comparison. Okay, which team had the best win rate, which team had the best streak of wins, or there are different things we can look into. Okay, so what I want to show now is what it would mean to be blind to the context, or not taking account the competitive context of football. It would mean basically doing this. So if you don't take the competitive context into account, it would mean that you would strictly look at does a team win, lose, or draw, and you wouldn't be interested in when the game was played, in which competition, at which stage of which competition. And that's one way you can do it, and if you again don't pay attention to the context, you can have this read on both seasons. You can read Liverpool's season as they played 50 games, they won 34, they drew 9 times and they lost 7. And you can read PSG season as they played 57 games, they won 42, they drew 8 times and they lost 7. That's one way you can actually choose to ignore the competitive context. And we can do the same by just isolating their Champions League run. So just putting in the same numbers as the previous year. And one way to actually look at this data is this one. You can read it as Liverpool played 10 games, they won 8, they never drew and they lost 2. PSG played 17 games, they won 11, they drew once and they lost 5. And I know it's hard to do, but you can say that Liverpool had an 80% win rate in the Champions League and therefore had a better run than PSG. It's a hard case to make, but I think if you actually don't account for the competitive context, the part that you are missing is basically that not all games carry the same information. You can just look at win rate and just stop here and just think that we can say that Liverpool won like 8 of the 10 games and they had a good run. And you can look at PSG's run and say that they had like a lower win rate and they lost more. But you ignore that they actually stayed alive longer in the competition. They won games that for me have more information than earlier games, and that they actually won the trophy in the end. So yeah, that's again like a really simple explanation of what I mean by competitive context and how it can explain the differences between one model and the other. And this is only a hypothesis I have, but I believe that Opta either ignores the competitive context completely or doesn't give it enough weight. As of now, I don't have the full detail on their models and what their models say, but that's how I understand basically how their model behaves compared to what my model says. And yeah, this is like how I see modeling assumptions. You can have two models looking at the same set of games, looking at the same set of matches, same competitions, and come with different rankings. And what I believe is happening, again, when we just have them side by side on the same date, is that what they call cross-calibration in their model actually does a lot of the heavy lifting and really tells what they think the best teams in Europe are and how they rank teams. It all comes down to the fact that different models are just opinions or different views on where European football stands and how we can try to rank teams. And maybe to try to explain this idea of competitive context a bit further, I have a small experiment I sometimes run on my side, is that I can run my model without the competitive context. So it means that I get the same amount of information from every game. So I look at any game, I don't care if it's a Champions League game or a Cup game or a League game, I don't care if it's the first game of the season or the last game of the season or if it's a semi-final or a quarter-final. All the games are about the same. So here on the left we have Opta's ranking. In the middle we have the ranking with the competitive context, and on the right we have again the same ranking but without this idea of competitive context. So if I remove that, the ranking becomes number 10 Galatasaray, 9th becomes Bayern Leverkusen, City is still 8, Arsenal still 7, Liverpool is still 6, Madrid becomes 5th, Bayern is still 4th, Milan is 3rd, Barcelona is 2nd, and PSG is still 1st. So here I just want to show that just changing one parameter or one assumption in the model can pretty easily change what your model says around their opinion or their view of how strong each team are. And maybe to take this point across, I can tell you how I understand each model reads different games. So for example, if we get back to this Champions League final, my model would say this was a game between PSG and Inter Milan. This was the Champions League final, and this has a lot of information around how strong each team is, and that should be reflected in the model. What I believe Opta is saying is that this is a game between a French team and an Italian team, and the score was 5-0, so that was a large margin of victory. But that doesn't tell me anything around the hierarchy of European ranking, and that does not affect how English teams are rated in the model. You can see that you can have two very different reads on the same game, account for different pieces of information, and therefore end up with different ratings. So where does that leave us today? So we can get back here, and these are today's ranking. Today is again March 26. And we can see that if we look at the top 5 top 6, so Opta has Arsenal, Bayern, Barcelona, Madrid and City, and Paris at 6. My ranking has Bayern first, Arsenal, PSG, Madrid, Barcelona and City. So here what we can see is that we don't really disagree on the overall top of the table. Both models said that the 6 same teams are currently the 6 strongest team in Europe. But the further down you go to the table, the more differences we have, but that's something that's completely expected, at least on my side. I would not expect both models to actually have the exact same rankings, and I find it totally normal that the rankings really start to differ the further down we go to the table. There are a lot more that I'm working on, but as of now, these are the main features I have on my project. So the first one I showed just earlier is the ranking, so it's really just the same table as basically the one shared by Opta. The second one is the chart. Again, we're looking at the same data, but what I think is interesting is that you can see the progression or the trajectory of teams over time. So it always defaults to the 5 top teams in the ranking, but here on the top you can actually change which team you want to show. So as of now, we see that Bayern is actually the best ranked team. Their last game was a few days ago. They won 4-0 against Union Berlin at home. They got +1 5 points. The second team in the ranking is Arsenal, so they played last Sunday and they lost the EFL Cup, and in this case they lost 15 points. Third is Paris, again their last game in the database is their win in the league against Nice, and they won 3 points. So again, this is just a way to actually check what each game actually did to the ranking of the team. The second page I can share is pretty straightforward, is the team page. So here we have just like some information on every single team. Again, you can select the team you want to show. Here you have the past 3 seasons of the team, and below here you can see like every single game I have for this team in the database. And for example, we can take one game at random. Let's take this one on September 28th, 2024. So Bayern Munich, they played Bayer Leverkusen. We know it was in the Bundesliga, they were home. The result was 1-1 and they lost 2 points in the rating, and after the game this is what their rating was. So you can check for every game I have in the database what the result was, what was the rating after the game. Pretty straightforward. And the last thing I want to share is the countries page. But maybe the best way to actually explain this page is to have rankings and countries side by side. So I will just switch to that. Yep. Okay. So here on the left we have just the ranking page. So that's the ranking at any given date, and we can see all the teams here. And on the right here we have the same thing, but just in a different visualization. Because what I found out when I was working on this table on the left is that it doesn't let you understand or have a sense of the distance between different teams, both in their own league and between leagues. So, for example, if we take again Bayern Munich, which is on top of the ranking right now, so we can see here it's on top as well. But the country view on the right actually lets you understand the distance, for example, between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. So we can see there's quite a gap here between the two teams. In the same way, you can also see the gap between PSG's and Monaco and Lens, which are the two following teams in the French league. But where I think it becomes interesting is how it lets you compare different clubs from different leagues. For example, here I have the English clubs on the left, here I have the Spanish clubs. So if you think about it around like the idea of like different tiers of groups, we can fairly easily see that we have a group of 5 teams at the top, so Bayern, PSG, Arsenal, Madrid and Barcelona, which would be like the first tier of Europe. Then if we go below, we can see that there's a second tier of Europe, which would be Manchester City, Inter Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Sporting Lisbon, FC Porto, and I believe this view on the right lets you understand where clubs stand relative to each other in their own league, but also compared to other leagues. For example, we can see that the English Premier League has more density at the top, so they have like 4 clubs rated above 1800. Spain has 3 clubs like in the top tier. Italy, as of today, would have 1, which is Inter Milan. Germany would have 2 clubs, and France would only have 1, and Portugal would have 2. So this is what I want to highlight with this view. Basically, understand where clubs stand relative to each other, and highlight things that clubs like Sporting Lisbon or Porto, which would be deemed like to be playing in like lower leagues, actually play at the same or almost the same competitive level as teams like Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, Liverpool or Aston Villa, and I believe this gives you like a better view of the different strengths of different teams in Europe. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share in this video. This is something I'm still working on. You can actually explore the website yourself. You can see the address here. And if you have any comments, questions, or things maybe you would be interested in knowing, you can leave it in the comments and I will try my best to get back to you. Thank you.